In their nearly 60 years of existence, the Phoenix Suns have been a standout and pretty notable NBA franchise. They've reached the finals 3 times, had MVPs, All-Stars, All-NBA guys, and have actually made the playoffs for over half their years in the league. They have a franchise win percentage of 535%, which is the 5th most all time since the start of the NBA. So how have they never won a championship?
Garherd turnaround shot in the air. It's good by Kevin Johnson. JJ steals the ball, and the Suns will win it.
I am not a role model.
I'm really excited for the chance to play with KJ and Dan Marley.
Charles Barkley, most valuable player.
The Chicago Bulls have won 3 straight.
The Phoenix Suns select Steve
Nash, the MVP of the NBA, has just dished out his 10th assist tonight.
He's got a bar to his right. The place is electric.
The Phoenix Suns select Devin
Booker runs into center, puts it up, and that's it. He's got the record. 61 points.
Double team. Got it. Oh my goodness.
I really am happy for Devin Booker that CP3 is there.
Paul leaves it up top for Booker. Looking, throws it alley. Oh! He puts it down. He puts it down. It's over. The Bucks have done it. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Kevin Durant to Phoenix.
He's too small.
I don't know how teams are going to guard us.
The Timberwolves
I've never been swept a day in my life.
complete the sweep.
Suns new all-time scoring leader, Devin Armani Booker.
The Suns have fired head coach Mike Budenholzer. Phoenix went just 36-46 this season, finishing 11th in the West and missing the playoffs.
If I was a Suns fan, I'd be so bummed out because I don't think there's anything worse than being unwatchable, but also having no hope for the next couple of years. And I don't see how you have hope if you're them.
So their first chance came in the 70s, when the Suns had a 42-40 record season, which was good for the 3rd seed of the West at the time. 1976 was when they made their impressive Cinderella run to the finals, in which they were led by
Rookie of the Year, Alvin Adams. Garfield Hirsch, along with Paul Westphal.
the Suns would surprise everyone by beating the Seattle Supersonics and the defending champ Golden State Warriors. Now, this was no easy feat. I mean, in order to make it to the finals, the Suns had to go through legends such as Otis Johnson, Gus Williams, and don't forget, mean Bruce Seals. Anyways, the Suns plunged through the West, where they would face John Havlicek and the Boston Celtics in the championship series.
Over in the Phoenix locker room, the message is simple. Beat the Celtics.
The Suns lost the series in a heartbreaking 6 games, but not without making history on their way out. Game 5 of the championship series holds the record as the longest game in NBA playoff history. The Suns trailed by 5 points with less than a minute left, but Paul Westphal went nuts and cleared the deficit single-handedly, sending the game into a first overtime, which ended in a tie. Then after that, John Havlicek's basket with 2 seconds remaining in double overtime gave the Celtics a 1-point lead, which Boston stretched to 2 points after sinking a foul. Then the Suns' Garfield Hirsch hit a last-second basket to send the game into a 3rd overtime, where the Celtics would go on to eventually win. After their loss to the Celtics in 1976, the Suns were playoff regulars. In 77, the Suns would draft Walt Davis, who would become their franchise player and eventually their all-time leading scorer. But by the mid-80s, the team's success tapered off due to injuries and off-court issues. A drug scandal in 1987 ruined the team's reputation and led to a roster shakeup. After a dark 80s decade, hope finally came in 1988, when the Suns traded for Kevin Johnson and drafted a young Dan Marley. These two were amazing for the Suns, bringing them success that they had not seen in years. There's just one thing missing.
Pardon me. I'm sorry. Excuse me. ever been fine, Charles?
Never. In his first season in Phoenix, Chuck was a monster. The 1992-1993 season was Charles Barkley's first season as a Phoenix Sun. It was also his MVP season. Chuck was averaging 25.6 points on 52% shooting, 12.2 rebounds, and a career-high 5.1 assists. Don't get it twisted, Charles Barkley was a star of the team, but he had some weapons alongside him. Thunder Dan Marley, a tough-nosed defender with a sniper's touch from deep, brought intensity and grit on both sides of the floor. For his heroics this season, he would be awarded to the NBA All-Defensive Team, and alongside Sir Charles, named an All-Star. Kevin Johnson, the lightning-quick floor general of the team, orchestrated chaos with a surgical precision, blazing past defenders with a blur of speed and slicing through defenses with uncanny court vision. KJ was the engine that powered Phoenix's high-octane offense. Johnson gave the team 16 points and 8 assists per game, setting the tempo and tone for a team that was destined for greatness. Rounding out the roster, Tom Chambers and Cedric Ceballos were the Suns' bench duo. Chambers, the steady veteran, Ceballos, the explosive spark. Together, they gave Phoenix reliable depth and momentum-shifting energy. With this new roster and Suns legend coach Paul Westphal at the helm, the Suns won 62 games, getting them to the first seed in the West. Things were looking pretty good for them, but they had to make it through a very stacked Western Conference. In the first round, they nearly lost to the Lakers, but after a heroic 3-win stretch, they were able to pull it out. Round 2 of the playoffs had them facing the Spurs, where not even David Robinson could stop the MVP Charles Barkley from winning the series in 6 games. In the Western Conference Finals, the Suns faced the Seattle Supersonics. This series was super physical. It had the Suns going against a legendary trio of Gary Payton, Shawn Kemp, and Ricky Pierce. Although it was in 7 games, the Suns pulled through and were on their way to the finals for the first time since the 70s. This time, however, it wasn't John Havlicek waiting for him. The Suns' opponent in the 1993 finals was Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, hungry for a three-peat. Regardless of their competition, the Valley was optimistic. They had the league MVP and a healthy team. If there was anyone who could match up against this dynastic Bulls team, it was them. So much so that before the series started, Charles Barkley said,
"It is our destiny to win the world championship. I have believed that for the last year, and I believe in my heart that we're going to win the world championship. God wants us to win the world championship."
I don't know if I go that far, Charles.
But I talked to him the other night.
The first 2 games, the Suns got spanked. Barkley had an efficient 42 points in Game 2 to no avail. They just couldn't match the dominance of the Bulls. Game 3 was electric. Kevin Johnson, who had been having a slow series, bounced back with 25 points and 9 assists. The Suns managed to take Game 3 and Game 5, but they just didn't have enough to topple the dynasty. After a vicious 6-game series, the Bulls would beat the Suns in what would mark the best chance for Charles Barkley to win a championship in his career.
Well, it's really difficult, I think, for our team right now because you kind of, it just hurt. I mean, I think people don't understand. Sometimes they talk about how much money guys make and what commercials they do and whatever. But at times like this, I think it's really bad to be an athlete. I mean, I don't think people realize that you are human. You do have feelings. Actually caught between a rock and a hard place because you want to say it was a great year, but you feel so bad right now. And just disappointed, hurt, and it just wasn't meant to be.
The year is 1996. 3 years after their push to the finals, the Suns were in rebuild mode. And with the 15th pick in the 96 draft, they drafted Steve Nash, a Canadian point guard from Santa Clara University. In Nash's first few years in the league, he struggled to see the floor, barely averaging 10 minutes a game. And so in his sophomore season, he was traded to the Dallas Mavericks for Martin Millsap, Bubba Wells, and a future first-round pick. Nash's time in Dallas showed that he could be a legit NBA point guard. He blossomed into a double-double machine, showing some of the most elite playmaking skills the game had ever seen. But when it came time to pay him, Mark Cuban decided he'd rather build around his new German phenom, Dirk Nowitzki. Seizing the opportunity, in the 2004 offseason, the Suns signed Nash to a long-term deal, arguably one of the greatest free agent signings in NBA history. With Nash back home in the Valley and the promotion of assistant coach Mike D'Antoni, the Suns would soon change the way the game of basketball was played forever. In the concert hall of basketball history, Mike D'Antoni was no traditionalist, who discarded the old, rigid forms of half-court offense in favor of a new tempo, a modern harmony, and a liberating structure built on instinct, rhythm, and spacing. In this orchestra of a team, D'Antoni was their composer. His offense was simple: run at the speed of light, shoot threes, and make shots, all in 7 seconds or less. Many like to blame Steph Curry for changing the way basketball was played, but D'Antoni is the maestro who deserves all the credit. In his system, spacing replaced stagnation. The pick and roll became a motif repeated and varied, like a theme in jazz. Threes and layups, not mid-range jumpers, were the harmonic sweet spots. Freedom of movement was the tonal center. Everything revolved around it. If D'Antoni was the composer of this offensive symphony, then Steve Nash was his conductor. Winning the MVP twice during the 7 seconds or less era, his speed, IQ, and unrivaled court vision made him the perfect point guard to lead the team. He shaped rhythm, dictated timing, and interpreted D'Antoni's vision in real time. His timing impeccable, turning each possession into a perfectly timed crescendo. Like any great conductor, he knew how to highlight his soloists while keeping the ensemble in unison. Amari Stoudemire was the team's first violin, the soloist. Stat was the one who soared above the ensemble. Thanks to his incredible athleticism, he pushed the pace alongside Nash. Running the rim, grabbing boards, and collecting fast break dunks, he provided the explosiveness, the flair, the instant impact, like a violinist who could suddenly shred a cadenza in perfect harmony with the beat. In his prime, Amari was one of the best forwards in the league. He was unstoppable. Shawn Marion was this team's heartbeat, and every orchestra needs a percussion section. They called him the Matrix for his athleticism, and that very athleticism, mixed with his do-it-all abilities, made him the perfect glue guy for Phoenix. Like a percussionist juggling complex rhythms, Matrix did the dirty work no one saw, but everyone felt. His timing and energy gave the piece structure and pulse. In the symphony that was this team, the role players were akin to the brass and woodwind section. Never seeking the spotlight, but when guys like Raja Bell, Leandro Barbosa, and Boris Diaw were on the floor, they were sharp, timely, and transformative, making the most of their minutes. They were the ones who cut through the rush, added definition to the system, and filled in the sonic gaps left between Nash's orchestrations and Stoudemire's finishes. Most importantly, all three of them were excellent shooters for the team. With every component of this basketball orchestra complementing one another in perfect harmony, there was only one thing this team could do: play.
Come on, guys! Just two of you! Get the rebound! Hello, Amari Stoudemire elevates and detonates.
And the rebound by Marion. Marion's all over the place right now.
I'm just like you, but 10 times better.
You gotta make that shot after you get that kind of stuff from Steve Nash. You can't miss that.
Suns' style of offense made the team unstoppable. If their opponent's defense gave Nash some room, he would burn them from the perimeter, mid-range, or at the rim. If they neglected Stoudemire, he'd dunk all over them. If one of the other three defenders tried to offer some complimentary resistance on the backside, Nash could spray the ball over to the newly open shooter at a moment's notice. In total, this formation gave the Suns 5 different options to choose from every single game. In 2007, the 7 seconds or less Suns reached their peak. Heading into the playoffs, everyone was healthy, and Nash was averaging a career-high 11.6 assists a game. In round 1 of the 2007 NBA playoffs, the Suns would match up with the Lakers, where their offense and ball movement was just too overpowering. The Suns would crush the Lakers' Kobe-centric style of play in only 5 games. While the Lakers were a somewhat formidable opponent, it would be the San Antonio Spurs in round 2, where the Suns would be forced to push the limits of their run-and-gun offense in their championship crusade. In 2003, the Spurs had defeated the Suns in the first round, and again in 2005 in the Western Conference Finals. The matchup of these two teams was almost poetic. The Suns' fast-paced, innovative style was in direct contrast to the Spurs' methodical, half-court offense. In the first game of this series, the Suns played with their signature pace, but the Spurs held the lead for most of the game. Thankfully, Nash kept them close behind. That is until the fourth quarter. Nash went in for a stop on this fast break and butted heads with Tony Parker. His nose was thrashed, but being the dog that he was, Nash was right back in the game, even hitting a game-tying 3, determined to win this game at home and keep home court advantage. Nash's nose had other ideas, though. It was bleeding so much that he had to be pulled from the game. He watched as the Spurs beat the Suns, helpless on the sideline. The Suns would respond by blowing out the Spurs at home in Game 2, determined not to let the first game define them. But when heading back to San Antonio, the Spurs would take a victory. This game was one of the worst officiated games of all time. It was so bad, in fact, it turned me to the Chinese broadcast. Tim Donaghy was one of the lead referees for this game, and he would be thrown in jail 2 years later after admitting to fixing games. Along with that, in an interview years later, when asked about the Suns, Donaghy had this to say.
How much did you affect the Phoenix Suns' fortunes during that time?
You know, obviously everybody knows I refereed one of those famous games with the San Antonio Spurs where they were definitely the better team in that series, and San Antonio went on to win that series. I talk about it often how the guy Tommy Nunes, who was the group supervisor at that time for that series, didn't like Starver, who was the owner of the Suns at that time, and was always pointing out in the tape sessions of things to call against Phoenix and things not to concentrate on against San Antonio. And I think it put San Antonio at an advantage.
Why would a referee hate Suns owner Robert Sarver so much that they would throw games? We'll address that later. As for the moment in time, Amari Stoudemire would comment that the Spurs played dirty, and combined with the history of these two teams facing off, Game 4 was going to get interesting. The game would first be taken by the Spurs, but in the fourth, the Suns willed their way back to life. And with 20 seconds to go, the Suns were up by 3. Looking to get a foul, Robert Horry would hip-check Nash, sending him into the scorer's table. Looking to defend their guy, Diaw and Stoudemire left the bench to confront Horry and protect their teammate. Little did the team know that those two leaving the bench would completely ruin the Suns' chances to win a championship in the 7 seconds or less era. 2 years prior to this game, there was a little incident known as the Malice at the Palace. This brawl between the Pacers and Pistons led to Commissioner David Stern reshaping rules about player conduct. One of these new rules is that players would be suspended if they left, quote, the immediate vicinity of their bench during any altercation they were not on the floor. And so yes, even though Diaw and Stoudemire were barely on the floor, both of them would be suspended for Game 5. And while the Suns managed to close out Game 4 and head back to Phoenix, they were without two of their most critical players. With their momentum gone, their rhythm stolen, and energy soured, the Suns valiantly tried to make it a 7-game series, but their flame was put out. After beating the Suns, the Spurs had a cakewalk to the championship. They defeated the Jazz in 5 games, then went on to sweep Baby LeBron and the Cavaliers in the finals. If the Suns could have defeated the Spurs, they were the heavy favorites to win the championship. Was it a broken nose, a fixed game, a hip check? How could this team be so revolutionary but not win a championship? Eventually, the team would be dismantled. They would trade Marion, the heartbeat of the team. D'Antoni would leave, followed by Stoudemire, and eventually Steve Nash. By 2012, it was a new team. No superstars, no unique identity, no playoffs. It couldn't get any worse than this, right? Wrong. The 2010s for the Suns would not be defined by a superstar, a play style, or postseason success, but rather by their owner, Robert Sarver. In 2004, Sarver purchased the Phoenix Suns and Mercury for $401 million. And his first controversial move would come when he fired Brian Colangelo, son of legendary former owner Jerry Colangelo. He would bring in Steve Kerr to be the new GM. And now with Sarver and Kerr at the helm, there was a united goal for the Phoenix Suns. Win champ. Not spend a lot of money. It was to be as good as possible without spending money. He turned the franchise into an NBA Family Dollar. Sarver's terrible ownership went pretty under the radar because the 7 seconds or less Suns were so good. But he really strutted his stuff when it came to the drafts. In 2004, Sarver started this fun thing called trading draft picks for money. He did this a lot. In 2004, he traded the 7th overall pick Luol Deng to the Bulls for cash consideration. In 2006, he traded 21st overall pick Rajon Rondo to the Celtics, as well as the 27th overall pick to the Blazers, both for cash considerations. And in 2008, the 24th overall pick Serge Ibaka traded straight to the Sonics for, you guessed it, cash considerations. Sarver traded incredibly solid all-star players for cash. And what did Phoenix drafts have to show for it? Alex Len, Gani Lawal, and Dragon Bender. For those of you who aren't NBA historians, that's like if your favorite restaurant's new menu items were dirt, a pile of napkins set on fire, and a bowl of cold urine. Outside of basketball operations, Sarver was still a monster. Everyone kind of knew he was a POS, but in 2021, the NBA launched an official investigation into his behavior. And all they found was that he was motivated to win champion.
Robert Sarver has been suspended for 1 year and fined $10 million. Following an investigation, Sarver used the N-word at least 5 times, treated female employees unfairly, made sexual-related comments, and bullied others.
Sarver would eventually sell the team in 2022 to Matt Ishbia and be gone from the Valley for good. But forever, the 2010s would be marked with horrible teams, gray jerseys, and as Chuck reminds us,
Look at them empty seats, man. The best fans in the world get to watch this trash. And what about the nachos? Oh, my God, the cheese is cold. You know, some place they give you good nachos, they put jalapenos. The Suns be putting pickles on it. Oh, come on, Suns. I just feel bad, because the reason I live in Phoenix, they got the best fans in the world, and they deserve better. Okay. They deserve better than they're getting right now.
So you could have just said that.
While it was mostly terrible, there was one good thing that came out of the 2010s, and that was Devin Booker. In 2015, with the 13th overall pick, Phoenix took the guard out of Kentucky, and from there, 20 years after drafting Nash, the Suns had found their new franchise piece. Devin Booker went from not even starting in Kentucky to dropping 71 points in his sophomore season. He became an instant star in Phoenix, reviving the city's love for basketball. Now, the team building around Booker would be incredibly slow thanks to a combination of Sarver's bad ownership and the plethora of bad talent in their front office. But hope came in 2018, when the Suns managed to get the first overall pick in the draft. In retrospect, it's obvious the Suns missed out on a franchise-altering player to stick next to Book, but at the time, the Suns needed help in the front court. And who better than the physical specimen that played right down the road for the Arizona Wildcats in DeAndre Ayton. Ayton had the potential to become the next Hakeem Olajuwon. In college, he was hungry on offense and had all the tools to be amazing defensively. The Suns happily selected him first overall. And consensus at the time was that it was a pretty great pick. That same year, the team traded up to draft Mikal Bridges. And in the 2018 season, things were looking bad still. But they were getting better. Booker would develop, the Suns would fire coach Igor Kochkov and hire a new coach, Sixers assistant Monty Williams. By 2020, Book was in his 5th season and had continued to up his scoring, averaging 26 points and becoming an all-star for the first time. Ayton would miss 25 games of this season due to a suspension, but he showed improvement, averaging 18 points and 11 rebounds, and showing some slight improvement with his effort on defense. Mikal Bridges, while still limited in his touches, was extremely consistent, never missing a game and being a standout NBA defender, and three-point scorer when needed. He became a fan favorite for this team, along with Cam Johnson. Their first-round pick of 2020 was a very productive from 3. Under the new head coach, this young group of guys had leadership and were pointed in a great direction. They were young and hungry, and when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, Phoenix was only 6 games out of the 8th seed. What happened to the Suns in the bubble was nothing short of legendary. They were seen as filler, added to the bubble because they statistically had a chance to make the playoffs as the A seed, and although it was a less than 1% chance, the Suns would still make the trip to Orlando to play their final 8 games in the bubble. Looking ahead to those 8 games, Coach Monty Williams said that outside of the teams that are right there to win a championship, we have the most to gain. And he was right. The Suns would win all 8 of their bubble games, announcing to the league that basketball in Phoenix was back. Devin Booker would average 30 points and 6 assists a game, leading the Suns to every win. And with a buzzer beater to eliminate the Clippers, he had finally arrived as a star. Despite going 8-0 in the bubble, Phoenix would miss the playoffs, but they came out of the bubble being the talk of the league, the next young, hungry team to look out for in the West. One person who was eyeing Phoenix in particular was future Hall of Famer, 10-time All-Star, 10-time All-NBA, and 9-time All-Defensive Point God, Chris Paul. Heading towards the tail end of his prime, Paul was traded to Phoenix, where his even-keeled leadership would mold the team into a championship contender. Jay Crowder was also added to the team, adding hustle, defense, and veteran know-how. The Suns would finish the season as the 2nd seed, going 51-21. This would be their best record since the Steve Nash era. And despite their fantastic regular season, they were overlooked heading into the playoffs, seen as too inexperienced. In the first round of the playoffs, the Suns were once again matched up against the Los Angeles Lakers, who were just coming off of their bubble championship. In Devin Booker's first playoff game, he would record an impressive 34 points and secure the win. After Game 1, the Lakers on the back of Anthony Davis would take Games 3 and 4, and at this point, everyone expected the reigning champs to pull out the series. But the Suns got hot and won 3 straight, once again sending the Lakers home in the first round. Round 2, the team would face off against the Nuggets, led by MVP Nikola Jokic. And while the Nuggets were frisky, they were without Jamal Murray, so the Suns swept them with relative ease to go on to the Western Conference Finals, where they would meet the Los Angeles Clippers. This conference finals matchup was one for the ages, a hungry Clippers team eager to make the finals for the first time in their franchise's history, versus the young Suns, determined to show the league that they had what it takes to make it to the mountaintop. Games 1 and 2 would show that Phoenix belonged. They had complete control over the games, in large part thanks to Chris Paul. At the end of Game 2, the Clippers were up by 1 with 0.7 seconds left. And in a strike of coaching brilliance, Monty Williams would draw up a play where Jay Crowder inbounds a lob to DeAndre Ayton, who would slam it down, giving birth to the legendary Valley-oop. The Clippers would defend their home court in Game 3, but the agility and athleticism of the Suns couldn't really be matched. They would send the Clippers home in 6 games, reaching the finals for the 3rd time in franchise history, almost 30 years since the Charles Barkley era. And the Valley was lit. The Valley of the Sun would rally together behind this young team, showing their support and coming out in droves. Awaiting them in the finals were the Milwaukee Bucks, a team built for war. Led by the unstoppable force of nature known as Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Greek Freak was making his finals debut, and he wasn't coming alone. Alongside him was Chris Middleton, a deadly shot maker, and Drew Holiday, a defensive juggernaut and floor general. And you can't forget about their secret weapons, Thanasis Antetokounmpo and Jeff Teague. This was a squad constructed around length, discipline, and sharp three-point shooting, and they were ready to test Phoenix like no team had before. Game 1 set the tone. On their home court, the Suns came out swinging. Chris Paul looked like a man possessed, completely controlling the game. The pick and roll between Paul and DeAndre Ayton was devastating, a steady, almost rhythmic assault that the Bucks had no answer for. Devin Booker lit up the scoreboard with his silky mid-range game, and on the wings, Cam Johnson and Mikal stepped into the spotlight, knocking down corner threes and defending with ferocity. It was team basketball at its purest, and it overwhelmed Milwaukee. Phoenix took Game 1, then Game 2. The Suns were 2 wins away from basketball immortality. Cautious optimism swelled into full-blown belief. But that's when Giannis became the Greek Freak in full. Back in Milwaukee, something changed. Coach Mike Budenholzer leaned into smaller lineups, moving Giannis to the 5. Suddenly the Bucks played faster, switched more fluidly, and punished Phoenix in transition. Giannis unleashed a finals performance for the ages, attacking the rim with relentless fury, drawing fouls, swallowing rebounds, and putting up numbers that defied belief. His 40-point back-to-back outings in Game 2 and 3 were just the beginning. Middleton stepped up as a closer, hitting dagger after dagger in clutch moments. Holiday, often overlooked, became the disruptor, pressuring Paul full court, forcing turnovers and breaking down the Suns' defense. Phoenix faltered. Adjustments came too slow. Ayton struggled against physicality, Paul began to look worn down, Booker scored in bunches, including a 40-point masterclass in Game 5. But it wasn't enough. By the time Game 6 arrived in Milwaukee, the Suns were fighting to survive. Then came the exclamation point. Giannis dropped 50. The kind of performance whispered about in finals history, and secured Milwaukee's first championship in half a century. It was domination. It was history. For the Suns, it was heartbreak. They had defied expectations, climbed out of years of obscurity, and reached the very edge of glory, only to fall short. But there was pride. There was hope. A foundation had been laid, a core forged in fire. And for the first time in a long time, Phoenix had tasted what it meant to be great again. The journey didn't end in 2021. It started there. But did it? The Suns had proven they had the mindset, the grit, and the hunger of a championship team. Chris Paul had even found himself a new addiction. But the very next season, things took a turn. An embarrassing, almost surreal blowout loss in the second round at home left the organization shaken. That unshakable confidence, it started to slip. Doubt crept in. In 2023, Matt Ishbia had officially bought the team. From the moment he took over, one thing was clear. He wanted to make a splash. Rumors had already been swirling about Kevin Durant wanting out of Brooklyn, and on the very day Ishbia took control, the blockbuster trade happened. Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, gone. Shipped to the Nets, along with 4 first-round picks and a pick swap. Essentially, Phoenix's entire draft future. And in return, the Suns got the greatest scorer the league has ever seen. Just like that, 3 core pieces of the Suns' finals run, their defense, their spacing, their chemistry, were out the door. In came Durant, forming a star trio with Devin Booker and Chris Paul. The message was loud and clear that it was championship or bust. And while hindsight critics and armchair analysts have since called that trade the moment the Suns began to fall apart, they often overlook one key fact. The Suns, even with their limited time to gel, were the only team in the 2023 playoffs to beat the Denver Nuggets twice. Denver steamrolled everyone else on their way to the title. So no, the Durant trade didn't ruin the Suns. What would ultimately be the team's demise came later. In the summer that followed, 2 key decisions would reshape the roster once again. And this time, the consequences would be far harder to ignore. On June 24th, 2023, Phoenix would trade Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, 4 first-round pick swaps, and 6 second-round picks to the Washington Wizards for Bradley Beal. This trade was insanely puzzling. At face value, it seemed like a fine deal. Chris Paul was old and pretty injury-prone, and Beal was an all-star. As for the draft capital, the Wizards would be entering a rebuild, so why would swaps matter, and who really even cares about second-round draft picks? But when we analyze it a little further, the trade makes less and less sense. Bradley Beal was a shooting guard, which, just to remind everybody, happens to be the same position as the Suns' franchise player, Devin Booker. Well, okay, maybe we can ignore that. Beal could play point guard. That solves that. Beal's also kind of old, and he does get injured a lot too, right? Yeah, both of those are true, but come on, maybe playing next to Booker and Durant, he won't have as many opportunities to be injured. And hey, look on the bright side. He is averaging over 20 points. That will be nice. Maybe he's averaging those 20 points because he's on the Wizards and he's literally the only person on that team who knows how to put the ball in the basket. Okay, so there are some slight problems, but maybe I'm just being cynical. Although I do feel like there's one more thing I'm forgetting about him. Oh, yeah. He has a contract worth $50 million a year! Well, Ishbia has stated that he's willing to pay premium for talent. What's a few more dollars? It's also the only contract in the league with a no-trade clause! Okay, I know it sounds bad. We may miss out on playmaking, depth, reliability, flexibility, maneuverability, all with this trade. But hey, on the bright side, we have some new players, and we have a promising young rookie in Summer League. On September 27th of that same offseason, the proverbial second plane hit the proverbial second tower when the Suns traded DeAndre Ayton and their new rookie, Summer League phenom Toumani Camara, for essentially just Grayson Allen and Yusuf Nurkic. This is the trade that broke the Phoenix Suns. They now had a rotation with 3 prominent shooting guards, 0 wings, and 1 old center who was incredibly injury-prone. Now, in all fairness, the Ayton trade probably had to happen in some form. He had long fallen from the expectations placed upon him at draft night. He had 0 motivation to contend for a championship, and he was a complete locker room cancer.
He played extra hard tonight. I've seen that, and my challenge for him is to play like that every night.
Did you talk to him at all?
Just on the court.
But there is absolutely no reason that Kamara was thrown into this deal like napkins in a to-go bag. This was an unbelievable fumble for the front office. Already in his limited years in the league, Kamara has shown insane defensive talent with impressive offensive upside. Things were shaking up with team leadership as well. Monty Williams was fired, and in his place, Frank Vogel was hired. At this point, expectations for the Suns and pressure to win a championship was at an all-time high. However, the core 3 barely played together in the season, and Bradley Beal was a horrible fit next to Booker and Durant. The Timberwolves swept them in the first round of the playoffs. And in the season following, after making some slight roster changes and hiring Phoenix native Mike Budenholzer as their new coach, they were optimistic still. But this season would really show that Phoenix needed to make some changes. After making the finals in 2021, they didn't even make the playoffs this season. This team was one of the biggest train wrecks in the league. By the end of the season, it was obvious. Something had to give. The day after the final game, head coach Mike Budenholzer was fired. A month later, the Suns parted ways with general manager James Jones. All eyes turned to Kevin Durant. His relationship with the front office had soured. Trade talks had surfaced at the deadline, and the failed attempt to move Bradley Beal, who refused to waive his no-trade clause, only added tension. Around the league, it wasn't a matter of if Durant would be traded, but when and where. The answer came in July. Kevin Durant was traded to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the 10th overall pick in the draft, and 5 second-rounders. And with that, an era in Phoenix came to an end. Many believed the pairing of Booker and Durant could bring a championship to the desert, but poor roster construction and relentless instability kept the promise unfulfilled. Bradley Beal is now expected to have his contract bought out, freeing Phoenix from the harshest penalties of the second tax apron, but the cost is steep. His deal will be stretched over 5 years, with a chunk of dead money now haunting the team's cap space well into the future. The Suns find themselves stuck. They should rebuild. But how can they? Half their draft capital was spent on Durant. The rest is controlled by Washington. The truth is simple. They can't rebuild. The Big 3 experiment didn't just fail. It left the franchise in ruins. It didn't just miss expectations. It set the entire team and its future ablaze. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus, often called the father of history, first recorded the legend of the Phoenix during his travels through the storied lands of Egypt. In his vivid account, he speaks of a bird unlike any other, a majestic creature said to rival the eagle in stature, yet far more radiant in its splendor. Its feathers shimmered with the fiery brilliance of the sun at dawn, and its eyes, piercing and luminous, were likened to glowing embers or distant stars, as if it bore the wisdom of ages within its gaze. But it was not the Phoenix's appearance alone that captivated generations. It was the profound symbolism it carried, a being endowed with the miraculous power of resurrection. According to Herodotus, the Phoenix lived for 5 centuries, and upon the culmination of its life, it would gather fragrant woods and aromatic resins to build a sacred nest. There, bathed in sunlight, it would burst into an awe-inspiring blaze, an inferno not of death, but of transformation. From the smoldering ashes, a new Phoenix would emerge, reborn, radiant and resolute. So too have the Phoenix Suns become a modern echo of that ancient myth. Time and time again, they have ignited with promise, only to be scorched by defeat. They have parted ways with legends, stumbled at the threshold of greatness, and seen dreams reduced to dust. Yet each time, when many believed they had seen the end, the Suns have shown a remarkable capacity to regenerate. They do not merely rebuild, they rise. Now, as the franchise turns the page once more, a new dawn breaks over the valley. A fresh era begins, one guided by a new young head coach Jordan Ott, an impressive GM in Brian Gregory, who turned the number 10 pick and 5 second-rounders from the Kevin Durant trade into a core of hungry, dynamic young talent. And of course, the team is led by the indomitable heart of Phoenix itself, Devin Booker, who not only has signed a record-breaking extension with the franchise, but in 2025 was etched into history as the franchise's all-time leading scorer. Above the court in the rafters hang the names of immortals: Paul Westphal, Alvin Adams, Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, Charles Barkley, Amari Stoudemire, Sean Marion, and Steve Nash. Monuments to past eras that, like the Phoenix, once burned brilliantly before fading into embers. And now from those embers, a new fire begins to kindle. As in the myth, from the ashes they shall rise, not merely to return, but to transcend. The time of rebirth has come. The Phoenix shall soar again.